Today we start the route through the important cities of the Caliphate. Córdoba and Granada are two turning points in history, two unique eras, two golden centuries of Al-Andalus. And incredible impressions await us on this route. In 711 AD, a Berber army crossed Gibraltar and invaded Europe. Muslims surprisingly quickly conquered new lands, because the territory of Spain, which at that time was under the rule of the Visigoths, a Germanic tribe, was in a state of crisis. Arabs were not marauders. For them these lands seemed like heaven on earth, and that's why the local population in some places welcomed them as liberators, not as conquerors. But the Muslims had no leader. At the same time, a political coup took place in Damascus, the capital of the Muslim world. All who belonged to the ruling Umayyad dynasty were killed. Only one young man, Abdul-Rahman, remained alive. He escaped, and after making a risky journey through the Egyptian desert, he reached the distant Al-Andalus, the land of the Vandals, as the Arabs nicknamed it. Here he settled in Córdoba, a city that was in chaos on the old ruins of Roman buildings. Abdul-Rahman brought here culture and knowledge from his homeland. He shared the technologies of irrigating the land. Thanks to him, oranges, lemons, and pomegranates, which were not found anywhere in Europe, began to be grown here. And thanks to his sophisticated trade network, agriculture began to bring great profits. With these funds, one of the most beautiful cities in the world was built, which later equaled Baghdad, Damascus, and Constantinople in terms of its wealth and political influence. And Abdul-Rahman himself became the emir of the Muslims on the Iberian Peninsula. Although Córdoba is located between the most popular Seville and Granada, it is often undeservedly overlooked by tourists. Although there is a lot of transport here, buses, trains, and the road takes only 1.5 to 2 hours to drive. You can find train tickets on the Renfe website and check available buses on the ALSA website. Most likely, the problem of Córdoba is the lack of information about this wonderful city. For some inexplicable reason, the Spanish still try to avoid mentioning the Muslim past of their country. In all history books, the Moors are described as bloodthirsty monsters from whom Christian knights saved them. They do not want to admit that Muslim culture was once so popular here that the local population converted to Islam en masse, and the Reconquista in fact was not liberation from the bad Moors, but just a struggle between two different forces for land and power in Spain. In fact, Córdoba has a much longer history. From about the 2nd century BC, it was Córdoba, the capital of the Roman province of Baetica. Since then, two key buildings have remained here, the majestic marble temple of Claudio Marcello, built during the reign of Emperor Claudius, from which only 10 columns survived, and the Roman bridge, dated to the 1st century AD, substantially renovated by the Moors, from which, after reconstruction, only 2 original arches remained. But it was said about this bridge that it surpasses all the ancient bridges of Spain in its beauty and reliability. In addition, due to its attractiveness, it has more than once become a location for filming, for example, for the TV series Game of Thrones. In the center of the bridge is a small 17th century shrine and a sculpture of San Rafael. It was carved in 1651 by Bernabe Gómez del Rio, as a sign of gratitude for the end of the plague epidemic, which claimed the lives of many residents of Córdoba. Every year on October 24th, local residents celebrate this day and light candles in front of the statue. By the way, the Roman poet and philosopher Seneca, an advisor to Emperor Nero, was born in Córdoba in 4 BC. However, Córdoba reached its heyday during the reign of Abdul-Rahman, when it became the capital of Islamic Spain, as well as the largest and most developed city in Europe. Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived and worked here side by side, producing groundbreaking works in the fields of philosophy, medicine, and astronomy, and the Alcázar, the city's main fortress, had the largest library in the Western world. Legends were made about the books of Córdoba. While the Royal Library of France had 900 books, the number of volumes in one of the 70 libraries of Córdoba reached 500,000. And among these books were some of the most complex works in the world. Córdoba scientists were ahead of Europe in all areas. They claimed that the way to God is through the mind. It was also the cultural capital of Europe, with hundreds of palaces, mosques, and public baths, and Córdoba's population was 10 times that of Paris. The roads were stone, the streets were lit by oil lamps at night, and there was running water in the houses. It sounds like an Arabic fairy tale with 1001 nights. But this was the reality of Muslim Spain in the 8th century AD. Another important achievement of Abdul-Rahman was the construction of the mosque, the Great Mosque of Córdoba, which began in 784. This wonder of the medieval world has been well preserved to our time, giving us the opportunity to fully appreciate Islamic Córdoba in its greatest heyday. The entrance to the Mezquita is via Patio de los Naranjos, courtyard with orange trees, where a large gate leads to a beautiful courtyard where the faithful, according to Muslim law, had to wash before praying. But in the 8th century, its tree-shaded arcades quickly became a favorite meeting place for local residents. Scientists held their conversations and argued here, poets composed poems, judges administered justice. Abdul-Rahman sent messengers to deliver the trees that grew in his beloved Damascus. Thanks to his nostalgia, the first palm trees, orange trees, and cypress trees appeared in Córdoba. The palm trees inspired the Mezquita architects to create another masterpiece that awaits us in the hall behind the courtyard, a graceful marble forest of columns and arches. Initially, this yard was open, and sunlight entered here freely. The columns create a mesmerizing effect of the infinity of the palm grove, in which it seems so easy to get lost. This hall symbolizes the immensity and complexity of God's creation. All things have something in common, but at the same time each of them is unique. Ancient pilgrims who saw this beauty said that whoever saw these columns once would never forget them. They completely take over your consciousness. The most sacred place of the mosque was the prayer niche, Mihrab. A master from Constantinople decorated the walls with luxurious glass and enamel mosaics. He worked on them for many years, using 30 quintals of mosaic tiles sent to the Caliph by the Byzantine emperor. Walls and prayer niches were sprayed with perfume. The square of the magnificent vault symbolized everything earthly, the octagon, the throne of the Lord, the dome, a symbol of the sky and the omnipresence of God. During the 2nd century, the rulers of the city expanded the mosque 4 times, because the Córdoba Caliphate attracted Muslim pilgrims from all over the world and the mosque could not accommodate all those who wanted to visit it. Unfortunately, in 1236, Córdoba ceased to belong to the Moors. New rulers, Catholic kings from Castile, came to the city, with whom violent Christianization began. The mosque was consecrated as a Christian cathedral, and Christian chapels and walls were built in the middle. But this was still not enough for the Christians, and in the 16th century the first chapter of Córdoba decided to build a mosque inside the prayer hall, the Cathedral of Córdoba, or the Cathedral of the Assumption of the Mother of God, which is like a huge spider spread over the columns of the mosque. Christians decorated the walls of the former Islamic temple with Baroque sculptures and paintings. This is honoring the Lord and sacrilege at the same time. After all, images of God and the worship of these images are strictly prohibited by Islam. It is said that King Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor who gave his consent to this construction, when he visited the cathedral for the first time, exclaimed, "If I had known what you meant, I would never have allowed you to do it. What you have built can be seen everywhere, but what you have destroyed is nowhere to be found in the world." The construction of a Catholic church inside the largest mosque in Europe was probably an unnecessary act of revenge. However, it is difficult to refuse the talent of the architects of the 16th century. If it were not for the stylistic dissonance that arose as a result of their work, the construction could be considered perfect. Rows of columns divide the temple, not into 2 or 3 naves as in most churches, but into 19. And walking in the labyrinth of niches, we can admire dozens of wonderful ancient ornaments and artifacts to understand why, despite everything, this cathedral, hammered like a cross into the religious heart of the grandest mosque, is still called one of the most beautiful in the world, as a symbol of harmony and opposition of religions and cultures. The Baroque bell tower overhanging the former mosque makes it clear that this huge structure now houses a place of Christian worship. Although it was once a minaret, and from its top the muezzin's voice spread through the streets, Today you can climb the 54-meter bell tower for beautiful panoramas and a bird's-eye view of the Mezquita's main building. Another stunning must-see in Córdoba is the Alcázar de los Reyes Cristianos, or Castle of the Christian Kings, which is not far from the cathedral. It once served as the main residence of Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, although the strangest thing is that it was not built by Moors but by Christians in the 13th century, in the Mihrab style. That is, while a bloody war with the Muslims was raging in Andalusia, the Christian kings built a Moorish palace here, which once again confirms the influence of Arab culture on medieval Europe. Christian kings may have hated the Moors who ruled Spain, but they couldn't help but admire the art and architecture they created. In the Alcázar, the three-tiered gardens, which are a miniature version of the Alhambra gardens in Granada, are particularly impressive. Walking here, you easily forget that you are in the middle of a big city. And rectangular ponds and canals with flowing water, fountains surrounded by aromatic plants and citrus trees, even after more than 700 years, they still refresh the hot air in the hot climate of Córdoba, a city called the Oven of Spain. Inside the castle, highlights include the elegant Arabic baths with star-shaped light windows, the mosaic hall, on the site of a former chapel, which houses an impressive collection of Roman art from the 2nd and 3rd centuries, and the Roman sarcophagus gallery with sculptures depicting the journey of the dead to the underworld. This entire collection of Roman objects was discovered in the 20th century under one of the main squares of Córdoba near the Roman temple. Despite all its elegant beauty, the walls of the Alcázar also witnessed some rather creepy events in the 15th century. First, when the palace became the scene of one of the fiercest battles of the Civil War, in which Henry IV of Castile and his half-brother Alfonso faced each other. And later, when the palace was handed over to the Spanish Inquisition, which turned the beautiful Arab baths into a prison and torture chambers. Nowadays, the events of those days are remembered only by traces carved in stones. Their echo still lives in the ruins of this old palace and in the imagination of travelers who daily stroll through the fabulous courtyards of the magical Alcázar. After Arab and Christian Córdoba, visit another interesting quarter of the old city, Judería, where the Jewish community flourished from the 10th to the 15th century. The first Jews settled here in Roman times and peacefully practiced their religion. While the Moors ruled Andalusia, Jews were also allowed to trade, establish their own bazaars, and even occupy high positions in society. However, the Christian monarchs and the Inquisition could not allow dissent in Spain, and together with the Moors the Jews were expelled from the peninsula. The wonderful neighborhood we see now is supported by a new Jewish community, and the entire quarter has become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Almodóvar Gate, Córdoba's best-preserved defensive gate dating from the 14th century, is the historic entrance to the Judería. The district itself consists of very narrow cobbled streets, resembling a maze, and two-story whitewashed houses with splashes of color from the signature hanging flower pots and colorful shop windows. Tourists love this area for the fact that you can take wonderful bright photos here. Judería is also known for its jewelry and silver shops, and you'll find many charming cafes and family-run boutiques selling clothes, tea and spices. Among the area's historical sites, admire the Gothic Mihrab facade of Casa del Indiano, stop at Casa de los Bulas de la Santa Cruzada, the Bullfighting Museum, and be sure to visit street Calleja de los Flores, what is adored by Instagram users. Córdoba is famous for the most beautiful courtyards decorated with colorful flowers. Every year, the city organizes a competition for the most beautiful patios, during which many private yards open their doors to the general public. Fiesta de los Patios is a tradition that began in 1918 to honor the efforts of residents to maintain beautiful patios, as well as give tourists a chance to see them. In fact, this tradition has Roman roots. Since Córdoba is very hot in the summer, the houses were built around an inner courtyard that kept it cool, while flowers, water features and mosaics create natural air conditioning. You can wander on your own and try to find the most beautiful outdoor courtyards, or visit the patio restaurants in the historic center, where you can relax while enjoying a flamenco performance or local live music. Córdoba will not disappoint you in any case. After all, this city of great history and incomparable architecture cannot leave anyone indifferent.